I had the privilege to go into a Fringe Festival on Valentine's Day this year to watch these guests who I've got on fucking reel today. We've got Jay, Cass and Jade from I Am Woman. And yeah, man, so thank you for coming on to FKR and giving me the opportunity to learn more about you guys and what's going on in your world. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolute pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
Absolute honour. Thank you.
I sort of fell into going to your Fringe production the other day, and I thought it was a good idea, and I didn't really know what I was in for, and I honestly didn't. I sort of had, I mean, the title says a lot, so I sort of did, but man, I was absolutely just blown away from the power or the message that you girls sort of put out there, and doing it through dance more than anything. And it was really inspiring, especially for a male. And I've got loads of questions. But I don't know, should we start with like a small little introduction on who you are, how we got here and what you guys are doing out there in the women's community?
Yeah, sure, I can start. So I am Dr. Jay West. I have a doctorate, so PhD in health psychology and exercise physiology. Big words really, just to say that I am a complete mind-body nerd, and that's how I Am Woman was birthed, was through this love and appreciation for the wisdom that the mind and the body has. And I love that you bring up that dance, was so powerful, because I truly believe when we're embodying our emotions, we can transcend what words can actually do sometimes and get to this real feeling body, which is what I Am Woman really is about. And that's why I love that regardless of your background, whether you're a male, female, non-binary, anything, you can appreciate the wisdom that the show actually wants to portray to people.
Yeah.
But other than that, I've been dancing since, I can remember. I started choreographing for drag queens when I was 17. I've been doing heels, all sorts of things. And my love and my passion for showcasing movement and dance through performance has just taken over my whole world now. So cool. That's really my mission, is creating platforms for women to shine.
Yeah. And I'd like to sort of get into that on where to go for women as well, because I afterwards, because I've got 2 daughters and I've got a whole lot of aunties and everyone, I was sort of like, you've got to get to the show, but it wasn't on long enough for them, but even just reaching out through, I don't know what it is, like dance studios or classes, I guess, or even the communities that you guys are offering, because I think it's super important. But I want to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can share it now, or
go. You might as well.
Both Jade and myself teach. Depends on the archetype that you really want to go into. So I truly believe that every woman has their own unique flavor. And so when it comes to dance, it's just finding a teacher that resonates with you, or maybe it's about trying a few different styles, because as women, we fluctuate even in our menstrual cycle, but throughout our life, we get drawn to different expressions at different times. So I think it's really important when you're going into movement and embodiment that you try different teachers so you can find different expressions of yourself. Both me and Jade run embodiment and dance. So I call it dance, but really it's embodiment, because you can go and learn technique, but tapping into the emotional body and using movement as a way of harnessing your own inner power and self-confidence is a very different journey to just a dance class.
Yeah.
So we can put our socials and
for sure
things in there, or both of us we always have resources and people that we can refer to. So I'm not shy at going, cool, based on your intention, I'm not the right teacher, this is the person to talk to.
Yeah, cool.
And I think cultivating a community that champions one another is so important.
I like that. We're doing it a lot in this podcast was never intended to be more about men's mental health, but I think just me being the host, a male, it's sort of really gravitated towards that way. So one, it's a real honour to have you guys on here and be having a different sort of approach to it, if that sort of makes sense. So Jade, how did you sort of get to where you are in this community? And
Yeah, so my journey has started over the last few years of diving really deep into archetypal embodiment. And so for your listeners that don't know what archetypes are, they are part of our human psychology. So you might be familiar with Dr. Carl Jung. So that's the lineage that I've studied under, and he was a psychologist back in the 1800s, and he was researching the human psyche, and he discovered that there are different energies or different compartments within the psyche, and he called these the archetypes. And there are thousands of archetypes. There's feminine archetypes, there's masculine archetypes, and every single archetype lives within us. So there's actually not one that does not live within you or me. And so I started my journey really going down, learning about the feminine archetypes and really unleashing and activating and igniting these parts of my psyche that had been suppressed or forgotten or shamed. And it took me down a really deep, profound road, and it completely changed my life. And now it's one of my core values in what I teach in my work. It's embodying certain archetypal frequencies and then embodying them even deeper through dance. And I don't have a professional dance background. I've always been a dancer since I was a little girl, but I was never professionally trained because it didn't actually inspire me. What inspired me was the energy that I felt when I danced. And that's what I'm so passionate about igniting in other women. It's that we can actually utilize the framework of dance and the power of intentional choreography and activate a frequency inside your body, channeling through a certain archetype.
Yeah.
And so that's been a small part of my journey.
Yeah, because is it just through dance? Or,
So
I mean, that's expressing it. Is it, or is it, or is that sort of finding it? Or I mean, we talked before about it, like it helps break down the uncomfortableness, I guess, or allow it to. Yeah, I don't know. Like, so is it?
for me personally, dance is, I guess, the gateway that I use to ignite energy within the body. But for me, it's actually through embodiment. So really harnessing and touching the true essence and the embodiment inside someone and allowing the archetype to really come through. And this is through, embodied journeys in workshops, and this is through conversation, and this is through speaking into the psychology, and that really being the piece that ignites in the person, and then allowing dance to then ignite that even more.
Yeah.
I'll probably just add on to that as well. I think one of the intentions of I Am Woman is using these different gateways of embodiment to bring people on a journey. And so some people are very visually stimulated. So the dancing and the realness of it, they can really receive. Other people, it's, we're very like guttural groans and we're sounding, we're voicing like, we're not trying to be perfect on the stage, we're being real on the stage. So, then the choice of music that we have, it's the sounds that we make, but it's also, we do go into the poetry, which is why we have Cass here, who's a magician and a word weaver with the words, because, and I come from a very intellectual background, so I do actually need that intellectual stimulation sometimes. And so with I Am Woman, we were trying to look at like, okay, what are all the pathways and the avenues that we can deliver this message of inclusivity, being a woman. And so words are also an important part. So, sometimes with dance, and I love that Jade's talked into the psychology, because there is a reason for why we deliver the things that we do, and usually is based in an intellectual framework, so to speak, but also the words, if the dance is taking you to a certain level, then the words can also take you to a different level as well.
I did like how the words broke up the whole production as well. Like, because it sort of took it into different sort of segments and
Yeah, I think it also it pushes the message in further. Like you're in your physical body through embodiment, but you're also like inspired in the mind as well. I read a lot of philosophy, and I love a lot of mythology and folklore, and I think weaving those stories through time and on the stage and inspiring people to dig a little bit deeper into like, what is it we're really saying here? Like, what is the history, the lineage of this particular archetype? Where can it come from? Because there are so many different levels. Dance, yes, but you can also read an incredible story about this and feel it on a really deep level too.
Yeah. I through my charity, I run a few men's events, like workshops, and we do a lot through like boxing, and that's sort of connecting the mind and the body, and the focus as well a lot, and helps us get out of our mind a bit, helps us feel our feet and feel our body moving. Because I don't know, I guess with dance for males, it's a little bit different. I don't want to rule it out, but I feel like we're more wanting to, you know, be a little bit more physical, I guess. That's how I find it, like for myself.
I've got so many thoughts on it.
Well,
so I do have a framework for men. So the show is based on the archetypal alchemy framework that I created. So I started yoga when I was 7. And so what I started looking at and mapping was the energetic frequency of these different archetypes that we're talking about, the chakra system, if your listeners are aware, of the chakra system, and like different biomechanics. So the different quality of our movement, like are we more flowy with our movement? Are we more staccato and very like direct with our movement? And so why I link it into like masculine archetypes, as Jade was talking about, is men can get polarized into this very linear way of moving. And like boxing, it's very like, I mean, I grew up doing boxing as well. So, you know, it's very goal orientated and it's very mission driven, which is incredible. And we can capitalize. So I've taught men dance as well. So I would focus more on popping and locking, break dance, you know, things that actually build that sense of strength, testosterone, masculinity. But equally, I can also take men into a softness and a permission slip to be fluid and soft with their movement, which I've also
Do you think
trained.
it's maybe an ego thing a lot?
I think it's a societal conditioning. I think you know, men. There's a hierarchy of like, oh, the alpha man is more valued, which isn't necessarily true. You know, I think every man has a role and depends on your particular expression and your archetype. Just as women are recalibrating this idea that there's an alpha female or there's like queen bee, you know, we're all starting to learn and recalibrate that actually we can champion each other's strengths. Yeah. And when women come together, powerful things happen. And I do think I've started to see this a lot in men's work. And I think men are starting to calibrate and go, oh, actually, this person is really intuitive and empathetic, and that's a beautiful gift. Or this person's really powerful and goal-driven and, you know, can see things in a different way. So I think it's really just about bringing out what your unique gifts are.
A lot of what we talk about on this podcast, particularly around the masculine, is that the women are so far ahead in advance when it comes to emotions and regulating your emotions and things, or just in all areas, you know. And I think we learn so much from you girls, and I think it's us having to step back and allow us to see that more, you know.
I don't think that we are more advanced. I think we've just been given permission.
Yeah.
I think it just comes down to, as Jay was saying,
True.
it's the social conditioning that we live in. I mean, there's no denying the fact that we live in a patriarchal society in which men are not taught to access their emotions and to show their emotions. And so when we can actually allow men to feel softer and to say, this is what I'm going through, we have breakthroughs in terms on both sides. Yeah. So I think the conversation really needs to come back to like, how can we support each other to create a society in which everyone's flourishing?
And I'm so glad you said that, because the main question I've got for you, I'm just going to go there, right? I'm just going to wait.
Please.
For
Do it. Take it to us.
Okay, so in the weekend, I organised and I talk about this more openly these days because we tried to hide it a little bit, but I organised like an event, a retreat for a lot of boys just over the weekend, just gone. And it's so beautiful. I mean, like, we've got ex-criminals, ex-bikies, and it's like all these like real masculine sort of men down there, and they're doing the work when we're crying and we're hugging and we've been vulnerable, and obviously I don't know if you guys have done any sort of plant-based medicines, but we're also doing a lot of healing and sharing, and it was absolutely beautiful, But we had this because it was such a lot of energy of all the boys that are going down there. One of the facilitators, the experienced facilitators, was a female, and so we just wanted to have her there on site just in case if she needed to step in, or needed that feminine energy. And anyway, we asked permission for all the boys because we're doing like a lot of men's work, so we were thinking we'll keep it men's. I'll try and keep this story short, but when she walked into the room, there was the energy of it. It was just beautiful throughout the whole night. And because we were in the medicine ourselves, none of us really sort of spoke about it. The following morning came up and we're doing our sharing circle, all the boys, and we're talking about it. And we all said how we felt this feminine energy in the room, even though she didn't really do anything other than sort of sing or play an instrument. And so we all done our sharing, and then we said, like, let's get Lauren. Anyway, let's get her in there and to share about what she went through. And she said straight away when she first walked in, she felt intimidated. She felt a little bit scared because obviously there were some very masculine sort of men in the room, but automatically she just fell straight into just feeling safety and inspired by seeing all these men doing the work.
Yes.
And then she just started breaking down and crying and sort of went into silence. And she just said, us women are longing and crying out for you men that are doing this sort of work. And then next minute, all us boys were all having a bit of a cry together. And so the question sort of comes, it's like, it's beautiful seeing the girls doing the work and what you guys sort of, what's the word? Like the power you guys showed in the feminine and what you guys are doing in the communities and things like that. And then equally what happened in the weekend with the boys, it was beautiful seeing that as well. And it's like, when do we come together? Well, what's out there to come together? Because I feel like, the women have had to do a lot of healing over the years and empowerment and bringing their power back into themselves. I hope I'm wording this right. And I just think, but like, I do feel that we are starting to come, like our generations and where we are now, we're doing the healing, and it's sort of at this time of like, how do we come together?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. I think
it's a big question.
Yeah, for sure. What first comes to mind is the fact that I think we are all in agreement here that the show wouldn't be the show without the men holding the pillars for us. Like for us to be able to go into our feminine and to create a show and to give so much of our heart every single night. Behind the scenes of that is our men feeding us, massaging us, listening to us, just being there, holding us. And it gives me goosebumps to think about, because that's us coming together. Like that's men recognizing what we're doing and celebrating us and not being intimidated by that, but being in celebration. And that's us also bringing them in and saying, it's not a show just about women and you're excluded from the conversation. It's like everyone is in this conversation.
Yes, I love that, babe. And
thanks.
I think it's happening. Yeah, I think it's happening now. I think there's a part that we needed to go first to really clear and heal and also remember the power of the feminine. But I also think there has been a reorientation of what the men really understand as being the feminine power, and it lives within them and it also lives within us. And so, for example, with the show, we have that creation and that force that is coming through, but we need that strength and that pillar of safety and support for us to then really bring that out into the world. And just as Cass said, the men, we all have beautiful partners, and they were holding us, they were supporting us, they were listening to us, they were being with us. They also trust us and believe in us. And when men really see the power of the feminine and trust that her oracle and her vision and her creation is actually the thing that drives this world, it's like we can reorientate to letting that be at the front. And it doesn't take anything away from men. It actually empowers them more. Because they are the holders, they are the safety, they are the gatekeepers, they're the pillars of this society that we need. And if there's a message that we have for the men, it's like, we need you. We need you, and we love you. And we get to do this together. We get to walk side by side. And maybe that just looks a little different in how the path is being led, but we're going the same way.
Yeah.
The other thing I've
beautiful, man.
started to observe as well is like men walking away from the show and being creatively inspired. So then they, like even my partner would go and create more cabaret stuff or be inspired to write new shows. Both of us have been performing in Fringe for 5-6 years, maybe even longer. So both of us are science orientated but artistically driven now. And I really believe that down the track, gender and talking about masculine and feminine is actually going to be a bit more obsolete. It's just going to be like this person is creating something and we all get to champion that rather than going one or the other needs to be the creative or one or the other needs to be the one holding. Like I'm just as comfortable holding my partner in their creative process as he is to hold me.
It seems so simple, doesn't it?
Yes.
Like it seems so simple, and I like how you're using the word champion, and it's letting go of the power struggle with it and reversing it.
It's also recognizing that the power struggle is in our institutions. It's in the way that society is being run. So it's not in placing personal blame with one person or another. If you have a man who does have a bit of an emotional regulation issue, that's his responsibility, but it's also a reflection of what's going on in society. And so when we take the blame away from looking at that person as the enemy and looking at like, what are we creating in society that's making him feel that is his only option?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that too, because it is super important, and not so much shaming it, more or less like
Understanding it.
Understanding it better, yeah.
Well, power also just sits in like our third chakra, or like it's the archetype of the boss or boss bitch or hunter or huntress, warrior.
The third chakra, so that's your
solar plexus. Yeah. So in terms of like the frequency, it's looking at, well, what are the measures of our self-esteem? Are we driving our sense of self-purpose and self-esteem on accomplishment and external things, or can we self-regulate ourselves and really come from the space of who am I as a person and how am I contributing to my community? Yes. Because when we have that, there is actually no space for comparison or like power dynamics, because we know our power is self-regulated and self-driven.
Yeah. It really does come to, I mean, what you were explaining before, Jade, was what was coming up for me is self-love. I mean, because I was going to ask, like, where does it start, in a relationship, in terms of like and it comes down to feeling like, I mean, your partners, obviously, it comes to self-love for them, and then when you self-love, it's helping them support and be a pillar for you girls to sort of really do what you guys are doing. So would that be something, would there be something where you would start? Oh, sorry, by the way, with this podcast, okay, so it's about inspiring better mental health. So a lot of the time I'm trying to dissect out of you guys to giving some messages.
100%.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm okay, so for me, and I'm on a big journey with this, like self-love I think is sometimes a cliche thing that we can throw out there, but actually dissecting what is self-love. Because as human beings, I don't know if I can swear, but okay, I was like, great. I was like, we have shit days. Like, let's get real. So I think actually, let's get real. Like, we have shit days and we have good days. And actually, self-love is, for me, also knowing your self-worth to be around people that treat you the way that you sometimes don't treat yourself, so they can remind you of what you are actually worth.
Yes. I think you said it really well, Jay, before when you were talking about being of service. Like to your community. I think that was a big thing that shifted for me in the last year, was realizing and recognizing that my idea of self-confidence, self-esteem, self-love didn't come from how good I feel when I do the thing. It's like, how am I inspiring people to feel good about themselves? When someone reflects back to you that something that you said really resonated with them, or something that you did really like change something for them, that is like true confidence and self-esteem and self-love, because you recognize that you are helping people. And I think when we live in such a individualistic society like we do in the West, we're sometimes very orientated into our personal purpose, and we're forgetting about the community. And it's sad, you know, a lot of people don't know their neighbors. A lot of people don't have a community that they are a part of. And so, like Jay said, you're not being reflected back how incredible you are. And you can forget that.
Yes. And for me, self-love, it really means for me, how much truth am I living in? So how truthfully am I living to my values? How much direction and passion and purpose am I living in? And I think especially for men, to have a purpose that is rooted in truth, that is rooted in your values, that's actually where self-love comes from. It's like you're making an impact and a change within yourself, but also in the community. And that's what self-love really means for me. How truthful can I live in my values and really be in authenticity to my soul's journey? And I really love this community piece because
I'm liking the community.
one of the big things that I have received from I Am Woman is the sisterhood. And really feeling what it feels like to be around women that just want to see you shine, that just want to see you be in your bigness. And if you have a vision or if you have inspiration to do something, they are backing you to do it. And that's been, I have goosebumps. That's been the biggest piece that I've received. It's like actually coming together and redefining and rewriting what sisterhood means, because just like there are the brotherhood wounds, we also have sisterhood wounds that we need to be in competition and that we need to one up on each other. And one of the big pieces I feel in I Am Woman, it's actually dissolving all of that, and it's showing our audience that you can be in true sisterhood, that you can support each other on your individual journeys, but also come together because we're all going on the same path. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people leave this show with. They feel inspired, they feel connected, and also they've seen women in different expressions that they might not have known exist. And I think that's also a really big piece of what we're trying to portray and relay, that the feminine, a woman, is it all. She is the full spectrum. And just like our men are, we have all these different parts of us, and you have full permission to be in every single one of those. You don't just have to reside in a certain particular place and feel restricted. You can really be the full spectrum. And I think this show really implants that in the community and shows what is possible and what is available to every single person.
It's actually when you're observing it as well, some people can get triggered by certain sections, and that's just as much of a mirror to what's happening in your own life, because when we look at these archetypes, we can actually create safety nets or dependencies on a particular expression. And so that's where, again, we need our community, because I'll use the mother archetype for an example because it's something that women can typically fall into. But if you're always the compassionate one, you're always the one that's outstretching and doing things for others, then you can sometimes be triggered by either the boss bitch, the people that are out there doing work and on a mission that they are aligned with, because the mother archetype can be like, oh, well, I can't do that because everyone else depends on me and that independence isn't accessible to me. Or they can get frustrated by the lover archetype because they're like, oh, that's well and good that they have time to go and seduce themselves and adore themselves, but I don't have time for this because I've got 110 things to do. And so actually what we do is by creating an art piece, it allows you a reflection to go, cool, what are the things that I'm inspired by? What are the things that I'm triggered or is an edge for me? And one of the big ones that I've noticed this year is that we added the crone archetype. And the crone archetype is this like ultimate matriarch. And so one of my students is turning 60 this year and was like, I want to be on a stage, but, you know, to highlight this.
Was it the same one I'm thinking about that was in the show?
Yes, yeah.
Because I thought that was really good.
So this was only added this year because there is that older women when you're going like over 50 that don't feel represented when they're, you know, on a stage and it's all these like sexy women that are like dancing around, and we wanted to represent the fact that you can actually receive all of the lover transmissions and the power boss bitch transmissions if we also honor that there's this other part that needs reverence, which is the crone archetype. And so it was really powerful, especially for me to try and choreograph it, because I was like, whoa, this is something that I haven't actually taken the time to observe and notice in myself, is what's my relationship to me aging or older women in my life, and can I be a champion for those women as well? So that's been a huge journey this year.
It's cool. I like how you've created the space for that as well. I mean, I sort of learnt a little bit about that reading the book of The Way of a Superior Man. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that.
Yes.
It sort of mentions a little bit in that, and yes, because I mean, it's also finding their place. There's a few questions that were coming up just between those two conversations, but like one of the things is and this comes up a lot in general for men as well. Is like, where do you start? You know, I mean, it was very inspiring seeing the what are we calling it? Production or an event or
The show.
show?
Production.
Yeah, show. It was really inspiring.
Transmission.
Yeah, and I
Medicine.
Activation.
And so I don't know. I just sort of it was very inspiring, but it would be also a little bit intimidating as well. Of like, I want to enter into that because I'm so inspired and it's so much fun and a community that I'd like to be a part of to express myself and growth and things. But what's the message there?
Do you mean from a male
No,
perspective, or just
from a
in
female's
general?
perspective. Yeah, like, so if there's a woman out there that was very inspired by it, but sort of feels a little bit intimidated, especially like maybe the older ladies. That's where I was sort of going with it.
Yeah.
You know?
Of course. Yeah, so we will be releasing a dance embodiment that will be delivered by Laura that you would have seen in the show. And with the background of me like helping and holding and creating the structure for her, but reaching out to me would be the first point, because if you have a creative idea and we have a big sisterhood, like, we will champion people and their vision, we will give feedback and allow refinement. But at the end of the day, me as an individual, or Jade as an individual, or Cass as an individual, can only speak to a certain demographic. You know, will attract certain clientele and allow them to go to the level that they want to. But there are going to be people out there that I'm not going to be the best teacher for. And so the best thing that I can do is empower people to be teachers in their own particular medicine. So Laura will be starting to deliver later in the year some of those programs, which are specifically for perimenopausal and menopausal women, so that they can all sit in circle and actually really hear and feel and share those stories together. But I do believe like something like I Am Woman is actually just a fire. It's activating the fire within different people so that they can find their unique expression and their unique voice. You don't need to replicate what we're doing. You don't need to be doing dance specifically or poetry specifically. If you walk away being like, I'm just creatively inspired or community driven now. And it's interesting you were asking like, what can people do? I went through a huge breakup. Oh gosh, it was a while ago now. It was like early 20s. I changed my career path, my friendship group, just everything about my life. And I remember I sat with myself in silence for a bit and I was like, I want to join Pilates, you know, just a random little thing. And I walked to a Pilates class and there was a flyer for a dear brother, Stuart Watkins, doing a 1-day like fasting and yoga retreat. And that was probably, 15 years ago, something crazy. And in that moment, it was my intuition was like, you're supposed to be there. And in that 1-day retreat, I then ended up meeting like 10 people that would go on to be some of the most influential people in my life. And so I think learning to follow your own internal compass of what am I interested in? Like, what is that? And when I say interest, it's like when you feel into your body, what gives you those tingly butterfly excitement, what feels right for you. And that could be, joining a meditation class. That could be doing a boxing class. You know, I think if you follow your own body's wisdom, you'll find your community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm sort of trying to take out the barriers or the monkey mind that's trying to stop you from getting there as well sometimes. You know?
Oh, we all have a saboteur in it. That's one of the archetypes. You know, everyone has a saboteur in there. And it's, you know, the hard reality is actually we need the pain of being separated from others to surpass the pleasure and desire of like what we want. Usually pain drives us more than pleasure. And so unfortunately, but if we can start to rewire that and go, I'm not going to wait for things to get so bad that I have to find a solution. I'm actually going to start to listen to my desires more to actually start creating some new life choices.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I'm not teaching dance in the community. I love to dance. It feels incredible when I'm on the stage and I'm dancing, but I'm not teaching dancing. I'm a writer. I work with words and poetry, and it took me a little bit of time to realize that that was my superpower and to own that that was my superpower and to allow other people to celebrate that as my superpower, because I thought I had to fit a mold. I thought this is the expression of women, and it's just not the case. It doesn't matter what discipline or what you're excited by in life. It's like you do, as Jay said, need to follow that internal compass and really champion and celebrate yourself.
Yours? Was it just being still, being observant of yourself? And
I mean, I've been a writer my whole life.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I was a child, I wrote a short story in primary school that got turned into the end of year play, and that was like a very big deal for a 10-year-old me, you know. I was like, what the heck? And I would say I felt a little too exposed when I was writing. I went to university and I studied creative writing, and I felt a little bit like, oh, I don't know if I want people to see these parts of me and know these parts of me, and do I even know these parts of myself? Because at the time I really didn't. And I went through a long relationship, about 7 years, in which I didn't write a single thing, not a single word. And I think that should have been telling in itself. But when I went through that breakup, it was like the floodgates reopened and words just poured through, and I realized that this is how I understand my world. This is how I make sense of my day. This is how I make sense of my pain. And so whether it is in moving your body, whether it is in yoga, whether it is in kickboxing, whether it is in writing and reading poetry, whatever it is that helps you make sense of your existence is what you should do.
yeah.
Yes.
How is it, and in a relationship, how you can lose yourself, especially in a new relationship? I'm in a relatively new relationship, and I and you can fall into it and lose, you know. So it's very important for what I've learned is to come back to who you are, because I mean that's who the person fell in love with, you know. But you can you can lose yourself in it because you just, you know, you want to sleep in more in the mornings and not go to the gym and things like that, you know.
Did she come to the show?
She did. Yeah.
Did she like it?
She loved it.
Oh.
Yeah. She absolutely loved it.
I love that she brought you.
Yeah.
No, I brought her.
Oh.
Yeah.
We love that even more.
Wow.
I was for it wasn't for. It was when I looked at the dates, I realised one of the days landed on Valentine's Day, and I was like, I got my
I just want to shout out to you for bringing your woman to I Am Woman on Valentine's Day, when you know you could take her out for dinner or whatever, but you were like, no, female empowerment, babe. It's like you recognizing and seeing.
her. I've done a lot of growing over the years, and you know, I guess one of the most empowering things I've done for myself is letting go. You know, and allowing to just, you know, like if you talk about dance, like, just go and dance. Like, you don't want to. Your head's telling don't do it. You know, we were talking about before, like, how do you get into a community? Look, I don't know if I'll fit into a community, or just go and do it. And sort of like letting go and being in flow a little bit more. So it was really no effort at all. I was actually really excited to go and see it. But, you know, the old me, 5 years ago me, probably would have been a little bit more hesitant, and probably would have got a lot more triggered by it too, I reckon. Yeah. Where, yeah.
Because I think it's important to have those little checkpoint moments, because even like, I'm sure all of us could resonate with us 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Like, we are always constantly growing. And so actually taking the moment to acknowledge and be like, whoa, what I feel comfortable with now is so different to what it was before, and how exciting that is of what's going to be possible in the future if this is how much I'm growing as well.
Yes, it's important to recognize and acknowledge where you've come from.
Yeah, I think we were just discussing on the way here, Jade, in the car, we were talking about this whole idea of like birth and death cycles.
I love where this conversation is.
Yeah, and I think we even have a word for it when you're in your death cycle. We call it the composting, because you just got to go down into the dirt and the soil and just sit in the muck of everything just to see what's going to be birthed from that. And it's so beautiful, but at the time when you're in it, it feels really, really confronting and overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a big piece, just speaking back to what you were saying before about how can women, like, what's the first step that women can take? It's like also just acknowledging where exactly you're at, like being real with yourself and being like, what am I experiencing right now in my life? Like, what is happening for me? And also, where do I want to be, and what do I want to be, and who do I want to be, and what do I want to embody? And like mapping that all out can really help people take that first initial step forward. But also be okay with things not being okay in your reality. Like, give yourself permission to not be okay.
That's right.
Because I think in society we have this, we've always got to be happy and we've got to be good, and like we can't show that we're actually struggling. And you see it a lot online. It's like everyone's highlight reel, but what's real? Where's the realness? I mean, your podcast is called Fucking Real. We want to get to that realness. And I think that's the first step is, having an honest conversation with yourself, but also just allowing yourself to not be okay.
That's a very, very important message. And having compassion towards yourself, saying like, I don't feel comfortable, or I don't feel like I'm worthy enough to go and enter into this community, even though it's what I want. And I think that allows it a little bit easier for the transition period. And when you talk about these rebirths, one thing I've learned, and it's hard, by the way, as we all know, but just try and get it over and done with. Like, rather than fight it and hold on to the side of the bank for, you know, I feel like the sooner you can sort of just try and let it go.
Well, when you're pushing it away, it's going to just grow and grow, right?
Yes. And I think for us women, we die every month. When we bleed, we go into a death, and then our ovulation is usually our rebirth. So for us, I think it's a little bit more graceful and a little bit more trust in the process. And when I say graceful, we've just been doing it every month. So when we do have those big deaths, it's a little bit more easier to trust the process than our men. And what I have noticed in my life, in my experience, is really allowing our journey and our trust in the deaths and in the rebirths be permission for our men to also go and die and rebirth into a new version of themselves. And I know for me, I've held my beautiful partner through big deaths and big rebirths, and letting our men know that it's okay. It's okay to crumble. It's okay to go into the compost and then rediscover who you are as the new version of yourself.
And so as a woman, so the man's gone away, done some work, rebirthed. How do you transition and not really knowing, okay, let's say, for instance, your man's gone away on an event like has just happened for what we done in the weekend. Then he comes home. I mean, you guys don't know exactly what went on there, but then he's got to come home and you know how like there's that accepting that this is the new identity of this person, particularly if you're the one on the outside. Sometimes it's hard to even accept the identity yourself, even though you feel change and things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
Me and my partner have been together 5.5 years, and we still every 3 months we do something called cheeky check-in. And it's this permission slip to go, hey, this is what I'm standing for myself in this next 3 months. This is how I would like you to view me or interact with me. And so I think when we go through these big changes, and we talk about this, I've trained in rites of passage before and leadership before. And it's hard once you go through this big metamorphosis, but you go back to a community that still sees you as a particular expression. It's really hard to keep moving forward. We default back to what we used to be like. And so what our role is to enroll people into a vision that you want to create for yourself. And so we need to have these honest conversations of, hey, I want to be seen as powerful right now. So say you've gone through huge death, you're likely feeling very powerless, but once you've really touched that powerlessness, an innate, like, deep power then starts to come through. So if you're asking, like, hey, I want you to see me as powerful, or I want you to see me as dependable, I want you to see me as this, and this, it allows you to see through the lens of what your partner wants you to see. And why I think it's important to actually articulate it is, for example, if I'm going into, like, at the moment, I've had a huge couple of months having, like, 5 different productions on, all sorts of things. So at the moment, I'm in a rest and recoup. I want to be seen as, like, more compassionate, more soft. But if my partner's relating to me as the fiery boss bitch that I usually am, he might see that, like, well, why are you being so soft? You're being weak. There's, it's a different discrepancy of how we want to be seen versus, how the other person's seeing us. So actually giving each other anchors of this is what I'm standing for right now. And if that's changing in each moment, even in our menstrual cycle, my partner knows the week before I'm bleeding, I'm going to take everything personally. I'm like, don't take anything that I'm saying is, like, full truth. Like, it's, there's differences, but I think it's important, one, self-responsibility and accountability of, like, who do I want to be in this chapter? And then have I articulated that to the people in my life so that they can treat me in that way?
Yeah. And an acknowledgement also in the fact that we do influence each other and we do affect each other as well. So that piece is really big. If you're going through a big death, it's like, thank you. Thank you for, like, your patience with me in this time. I really appreciate it as I'm moving through this.
Yes.
One thought that came to mind, which you can do with a partner. So this is like a little activity that you can do at home. I did in a leadership training, and it's aspecting with one another, like, what you want to be acknowledged for. And so you just sit opposite a partner and be like, what would you like to be acknowledged for? Say you'd be like, I've started this podcast. And then I would return, I really want to acknowledge you for starting this podcast. You say thank you. Boom, again. What would you like to be acknowledged for? And you just keep going. You can put on the timer for as long as you want. And I realised, when I did this ages ago, a friend was a mother, and she was holding so much for being a mother but felt guilty to be acknowledged for, like, I just want to be acknowledged for making my lunch for my kids every day. Like, of course, babe. Like, it's our acknowledgement shouldn't be just based on these big achievements. It can be the smallest things. And, especially when we're going through mental health-based stuff, it can be like, hey, I just want to be acknowledged for getting out of bed today because I'm struggling at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Acknowledgement's powerful.
And communicate. I'm picking up on communication as well. I feel like if we're talking about relationships, I feel like we sometimes just take for granted. Sometimes we just think your partner knows what you're actually going through or what you're thinking sometimes, like, I'm actually having a really bad day, and she's like, oh, I actually thought you're actually going all right, and like you say with, I think it's also important for men to sort of understand the cycles that women go through.
Of course.
I mean, because we've, and talk about the communication part of it, we just think, you guys are like us,
The communication thing is a big one because, well, we all are very psychology driven here.
Yeah.
I just finished my degree in psychology as well. I'm doing my honours right now. And I think a big piece that I see in relationships often is that there's stories and narratives that people are holding, which come from the past, they come from childhood, they come from the wounds that we carry around, and they distort our ability to see things clearly. There's a really amazing SBS show called Couples Therapy that's taken by a clinical psychologist. She's amazing. And you see real world couples discussing their issues, and you can see the ways in which they are miscommunicating or reading into something that's not there, that's based on their own stories. And so I think when we're talking about this idea of communication, we also have to talk about, like, what are the stories that you're carrying? And let's get real about how they affect and how they play out in our dynamic.
Yes.
And with those stories, how do you change them? Like with the neuroplasticity of, like, I mean, I know plant-based medicine is really good for it, but, you know, if you're not there or ready for that, and that scares the shit out of you, like it does most people, but, you know, breath work, dance, I guess.
I go see a therapist, and an exercise that she had me do was, on one side of a notebook, I was to write down when I would have a judgment or a thought come up about my partner, a friend, whatever it is in my life. And then I had to, in the same breath, reword it so that it was neutral, so it didn't have a charge. And then I had to turn the book over, and I had to write one thing that was really good or really grateful about that moment. And so that is rewiring the brain. That is the neuroplasticity of looking at things differently and actively changing in real time the narratives and the stories that we keep.
Yes. Yeah, just on the woman's cycle and men understanding that. When a man understands a woman's cycle and her body, it's sexy. We love it.
What should we understand about it?
I think understanding that when we're going into our winter, our bleed, we're softer, we have less energy, we're a little bit more inward, we're a little bit more sensitive.
And is that a good, sorry to interrupt, I'm probably going to have 100 questions with this, because I want to get the message out there for the boys.
Yes.
So you're looking at it as a winter?
Yes, if you look at it as seasons, when we bleed, that would be our winter. So if you can think of winter, it's a little bit more grey, it's a little bit more dark, it's like more inward, we're more reserved. And when a woman is also connected to her cycles, she'll really honour this time. And so when our man can also support us in honouring that time, maybe it's just...
chocolate.
Yeah. Maybe it's chocolate. Maybe it's getting us a beautiful cacao in the morning, or even just their energy is a little bit more softer. I say that I'm going into my little sloth mode, and, you know, my partner will really make sure I'm feeling supported in that. And it's just nice to feel that we don't have to override that natural part of our cycle, and that our man is just understanding and honouring where we're at.
Cool.
And then the same with our ovulation. It's like we're coming into ovulation, which is our summer, and we have a little bit more energy, maybe we're a little bit more fiery and a little bit more sexual, and it's like also erotic. It's letting our partner know that this is what's feeling alive for us. And I think just the understanding and the awareness, that's enough for us. It's us knowing that they understand what is happening within our body, just in the energetics. They don't have to know the finer details. If they want to, great. But it's just allowing them to honour us where we're at in our cycle and feel supported, because for a long time we haven't felt supported in our cycles. The system isn't there to support the feminine cycles. That's why we aren't giving time off when we bleed. We're just told to force and push through and keep going and work, go.
Take a Panadol.
And that's actually not how the feminine works. We're cyclical beings. We ride up and we ride down, and that's the natural cycle of our bodies, but also the natural cycle of nature. And so when our men understand that, it brings a deeper reverence and a deeper honouring of the feminine.
And I like it that you brought it up as it's been sexy if a man's like observing that, you know, like so for those who are listening, and I was even listening to it as well, like dive into that. Like you don't like, you know, sometimes from a male's point of view, it's like, oh, we got to stand back and don't ask questions. It's private. It's you know, but rather than
get involved.
Yes.
You know, my
Yeah.
partner will go when he goes grocery shopping. He will purposely get things according to what cycle I'm in. He has a chart where it's like in the different things. He's like, oh, okay, blueberries here, red meat this time, and it's like he loves it. He nerds out on it, and he feels like he's really of service when he's in that space.
Yes.
I would say as well though, it's not the male's responsibility to know everything straight away.
Yes.
Like it's a team effort of like get curious, ask the questions of like, how can I support you right now? If the women are in it, they might not know, and if learning what's going to make them feel safe and nourished is something new for them, then for them it's reflection when you come out of your bleed to be like, cool, what do I actually need in that time? And just again, communication. Come back to like sharing together and workshop it together. Every month might be different as well.
Yes, communication. I love that. And if men are curious, ask your woman. Ask her.
I like how you mentioned that though, because like you know, create that space for your man. Because I know from a male's point of view, it is something that we don't know where to cross the line with it. So if that space is opened up from a female and said, hey, look, I just saw this on a podcast, you know, like...
I'd love to understand your cycle a little more. Do you have space and are you comfortable with sharing with me? Like just having that open communication and that conversation. Yeah. Communication is hard.
It is.
We love it.
Very sexy. It's even sexier to over communicate than to under, of course. So it's nice to feel like you're on the same page and you're on the same journey and you're on the same team. I think when communication breaks down, it can sometimes feel like one person's on one side of the swamp and the other person's on the other side, and it's like, where's the bridge? But it's not. It's you're both on the same side, looking at the problem and trying to find a solution. I think that's really important.
What is some, man, we're going right into a relationship theory. I feel like I got the right guest on board, eh? So with communication, and like let's talk about it in relationships, but I was like just what you said then, like, you can see that in all aspects of life, not just in a intimate relationship, but I am feeling a lot of the community that I'm in and the conversations I'm having is that relationships are a common struggle these days. You know, I'm not saying for everyone, but you know, because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and his missus is also a psychologist, and they wanted to jump on here, and we wanted to have a relationship sort of session, and he was saying it as well. He's just like, man, like the reason why we want to come on and talk about it is because we are finding that a lot of people, particularly around like communication. So what are some take homes for like trying to, I guess, encourage better communication?
I studied with a somatic sexologist in America, so this is again something I'm very passionate about.
Throw us off here. Give us something.
So I find it interesting because even my partner, like last night, was sending me like a quiz on different. What was it? I can't remember the wording of it, but there's all these different frameworks out there. So I'd say like, do little sexy homework together, listen to a podcast about relationships and then debrief it together, or look at different like intimacy. So I've trained in the erotic blueprints. I find it a fascinating thing and actually gets me really excited sexually to be talking about all these different ways of creating intimacy. So for me, it's like be a team, go do things together, be curious together, go learn things together. That's me and my partner's particular wiring is we're both very curious humans, so we love growing together. So whether you're like adventure based, if you and your partner love adventures, go create some adventures together so that you can keep cultivating what both brings you alive.
Yeah, there's a lot of different like resources for couples as well to have those conversations if they find that communication doesn't necessarily come easily for them.
Or even if they do.
even if they do.
I think everyone should keep learning, regardless of whether you're a good or bad communicator.
Exactly. I mean, I think we all maybe are familiar with the 36 questions to fall in love, but they're basically, you can do them with friends, you can do them with family members. They're just insightful questions to really like have honest conversations with yourself and someone else. And I actually printed them out and had them at my workshop on Sunday. I had a poetry workshop, and the whole theme of it was lover. And, you know, we really spoke into a lot of those kind of questions of intimacy and what your needs or your desires might be. There's also the John and Julia Gottman. They have developed a relationship date night series in which each date night that you go on, you have a different theme about your relationship. It could be trust and commitment or your sex life. And there's certain questions that you would sit and speak with each other on. And so just finding out what resource really speaks to you.
Yeah. For me, and Mitch is going to love that I'm going to bring this in here, but talking about your values. So me and Mitch are really big on our values, and we regularly will talk about, write down and redefine what our values are now compared to maybe 3 months ago or 6 months ago.
As a relationship or as
an individual, but then also our relationship values, like where are we going? What are we both into? What are we both devoted to in this relationship? But more so individually, because then you can link and connect your values and also understand one another on a deeper level. So if Mitch's values are this and mine are this, I can understand him deeper, but also learn how to communicate more in his values or create things in our relationships that are going to support him in his value. And for us, it's great because a lot of our values are actually the same. We have similar values. So where we're going in our life feels quite smooth because we're both just individually living out our values and they're connecting. But for me and Mitch, it's like maybe my values are going to change in a year. At the moment, my highest value is my business and serving and my mission, and so is his. So we connect on that deeper level, but maybe in a few years my values are going to change for, I want to start preparing to be a mama. And so it's like understanding where your partner is at in connection to their values, so it can actually build a deeper resonance with how you speak to them, how you show up for them, but also understanding them more.
I like how you said allowing to keep growing too.
And change.
Well, that's why I think me and Owen do our checkpoints, so our cheeky check-in every 3 months. So what we look at is, one, similar values. What are our values? How do we want the other person to see us, and how would we like to be supported in the next 3 months? So we both do that. We also go into 3 things that we're grateful for, because I think it's important when you're in a relationship, things are often intended but not always spoken. And so actually having this like point to be like, cool, I'm going to receive your compliments and actually really receive, and likewise express what I really feel. So sharing gratitude. We then go into the accomplishments or the things we want to celebrate within our relationship in the last 3 months. So again, being able to be like, cool, we're an awesome team. Like, look at what we've done. And this might be external accomplishments, or it might be like, hey, we had this disagreement, but we came together within a couple of hours and we worked it through, and like celebrating, you know, the times that when there is friction, because it's going to happen in relationships. And then we go into things like, well, what do we want to explore? And you can break this down into, emotionally, you know, let's do the 36 questions in the next, or let's do 5 in the next 3 months, or whatever it is. Or I want to have a date night that's themed like this. I want to experience this with you. Then we specifically have like sexy themes of like, okay, what as a relationship, like what's exciting us sexually, and is there a little sex challenge that we can have? Like, I mean, I could go into lots of different things here, but like, you know, having something that's exciting both of you and feeding both of you, and that shared vision of where you're going forward as well, and making it accessible of like one thing for the next 3 months. It's not writing a whole paragraph of this, because then you're going to get to your next 3 month check-in and be like, oh wow, we didn't do anything, because it's overwhelming. And given sometimes we do get to the check-in and we're like, oh wow, both of us have been so busy, we've only got one out of this this list, but actually creating things together, I think.
Yeah.
Again, we're surrounded by creatives, so we're like creating things.
Yeah.
So
Well, what I'm picking up on there is just having fun. I'm sort of going. I see
Play. Play is so important.
We
in
are
a
all about the
relationship.
play.
I spoke about how like in the last 5 years I've been doing like a lot of work and come a long way, but I've got a little bit serious.
Yes.
Yeah, like in terms of like
It happens
Yeah, like-
on the journey.
and especially like when you're giving up alcohol and you know and then you can start getting it can turn a little bit toxic on yourself. Like you can sort of start you're criticizing yourself in other areas, I guess. But it hasn't gone toxic with me yet, but I there was a part over Christmas where I was just like, man, I just feel like I'm not having any fun anymore. It's all about me putting on events and doing this and doing that, and then your creative brain switches off a little bit. So even outside of a relationship, super important in a relationship, but also even more important to be doing it on a personal level as well. Yeah,
100%.
and
Yes, we
also getting curious of like what would bring me excitement right now, because if like what used to bring you excitement might not be true anymore. And it could be like, for me at the moment, sitting in the backyard naked reading my book is definitely exciting.
Good time.
Versus there's other times where I'm like, cool, yeah, I want to be on a stage, or I want to be big, or I want to be learning something, or it's expansive. So we have this natural like expansion contraction of, does our energy want to go external or does it want to come internal? And not comparing this idea of play being something that has to be extroverted. And me and my partner actually run a workshop called The Power of Play, which goes into these different ways of relating to play. And that can be play as an individual, play as a group, play if you like structure. Some people like playing is learning something that's systematic and framework orientated, or play can be creative. So not judging yourself for whatever brings a sense of joy and fulfillment for you individually.
Yes.
Yeah. And me and my partner, I'm totally outing him now.
I hope you're
Well,
part
I
of
know
the
all
podcast.
about it.
But we actually do love a bit of role play, and not like role play as in just, I think when people hear that word, they think just the bedroom, and yes,
Sexiness.
that. It's very sexy. But also it's in like embodying and playing out a character, and like, what does that character talk like? What does that character think like? And like, when you see your partner in a very, very different space, it can really like reignite and refuel some like beautiful new energy and new spice into the relationship. And also you just get to see this really creative part of your partner come out, where afterwards you get to completely decompress it together and be like, that was so funny when you said that thing, and then you put that accent on, and you know, and
That's why you want to work with Archetypes. It's so fun. And I feel like there is a men's program coming.
I reckon a lot of men are out there going, holy shit, Dave. You know, like there's a lot to take on.
Yeah. I'd like to speak something with that, with the play piece. So for me, I am a recovering party girl. I was out every weekend. I was at every festival. That was my play. I was heavily on the alcohol, the drugs, like all of that. That's how I thought that I could play. And then going on my healing journey, I stopped all of that. And I went through a similar thing of, oh, wow, my life feels really boring right now. I feel really serious. And I actually had to redefine and reconnect to that relationship of music, of dance, of going out, of festivals, of doofs. And now I still go to all of those events. I'm just sober.
Yeah, right.
And me and Mitch still go to, we were just at Above and Beyond at Metro City like last week, and we had the best night, and we were sober because I don't actually need substances to allow myself to play.
Yeah.
My energy now sober is enough, and I actually have so much more fun when I'm sober. And yeah, there might be a little microdose of some mushies here and there, but it's not reliant on that. And I think it's important to know that you can still do the things that you love as the version that you are now. Just because you've gone on this healing journey, you've taken substances out of your life, doesn't mean that you then have to avoid those places or those experiences. We go to Blazing Swan Bush Dove Festival for a week. Like, we go to these
you guys
places.
going to that?
Yes.
oh yes.
Oh yes. And I think
Come dance.
yeah,
I run a
come.
workshop.
Bring the men.
Well, Cam Watkins just spoke to me about it. Yeah.
love Cam.
So Cam Watkins has been here. I've had Stu on as well. Yeah.
We love Cam. I see you've
He's
also
a
got
legend.
Brotherhood Awakening.
Yeah.
We love
I
Rye, we
how
love
that we're
Jamie.
all connected in our own ways.
The
you know?
Human Alliance, we
Yeah.
love those men.
beautiful.
Yeah, so I just wanted to really speak because I know, especially for a lot of men, they have also come from party backgrounds and then they think they need to become this stiff, rigid, sober thing. And it's like, yes, but you can also still live your life. You can also still go out and play and spend all night on the dance floor. And there was a huge pivotal moment in me where I remembered that I am a wild woman. I love getting wild on the dance floor. I love losing myself to the music. I love that experience. So I can still have that and it actually be a nourishing, healing journey for me now.
Yeah.
It's a nourishing experience and it doesn't take anything away from the fact that I'm growing, I'm healing, and I'm still on that journey.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that because I do resonate with that a lot. And a lot of conversations, particularly in our community, come from party backgrounds and we always having the conversations. And a lot of us are like holding space for like healing and things like that. And we're like, man, I feel like I just want to go out and let loose, you know. And you know, a big thing that does come up though is just setting those intentions as well.
Yes.
And not being hard on yourself. I think there's a big difference between going out because you feel you have to and you have to take substances and
Yes.
get drunk and things like that because you have to. But I think it's also okay going, you know what, there's this festival coming up in 2 months' time. I've been doing really well. You know what, I'm just going to go out and even if I do sit on the couch for 2 days afterwards feeling sorry for myself, at least that's my intention and I'm doing it and I'm going to have fun doing it.
Yes, and if you want to have a few beers, if you want to have a margarita, if you want to get on it, like I think for me and what I've experienced is there's so much pressure on the healing, spiritual, transformational community that you need to be this certain way, otherwise you're not healed or like you're not on this certain level of enlightenment. And we love to party. It's just not reliant
Should we go
on
and party?
us.
I was about to say, it was really funny because like we did the I Am Woman transmission in the show and then we're all at the tiki bar getting margaritas, like dancing on the tables and it's just like, okay, all the I Am Woman girls are out. Like, you know, we can party as well.
Yeah.
That feels real to me.
Yeah.
I like that because when I first met my partner, I was like completely sober and I was going through this period of like, man, I just feel like I'm boring, like, you know, and I was going to festivals and all that sober and it was fine, but it wasn't, you know, I was sort of getting to 10 o'clock and like, yeah, I'm ready to go home and it was great, but because I had the podcast as well and I was thinking like I didn't want to go and do this podcast and then go out in public. Not that it's huge, but I do get people hit me up, a few times. And I didn't want to be that guy that was there with a beer in my hand and sort of partying and, like living two lives, I guess. So like to hear you girls sort of, it's a little bit different, I guess. I could imagine you guys going out and having some margaritas after.
Absolutely. But I think that's the psyche of thinking things are black or white. It's like human beings are so complex. We can have two different value systems that seem like they're competing with one another, but are actually just like two different desires. So I think it's rather than seeing things as black and white, it's just seeing things as colourful and we can have two different desire systems.
Yeah,
in the
It comes
same
down to
moment.
the story that you're telling
Yes,
yourself
well, I was
as
just
well,
about to say, it's also intention. Like, what's your intention behind it? Are you going out to have margaritas and party because you don't want to feel your feelings? Or are you going out because you want to celebrate yourself because you've had an epic day and you're like, fuck yeah. You know, it's like intention is really everything and it's about being honest with ourselves when we're doing it. And I think we know as an Australian society that we have had a history with drinking culture that is toxic and that that does need to be and has been spoken about. And I think it is shifting. I'm noticing a lot more younger people not necessarily partying the way that we did when we were in high school and in our early 20s. So I think it's changing slowly, that you don't need it. It's not a crux. It's not something to rely on. But, yeah, I think just having those conversations of like, am I going to get fucked up because I'm in a really bad place in my relationship and I don't want to deal with it? Or am
Avoid
I...
my reality.
Yes. Yeah, it really comes down to like what's going on.
I can remember with even just the sex side of things, like like if you put it into percentages, it's like 90% of the time was alcohol related, you know, and it's sort of like, so for a lot of men out there, it's like they need to be drunk to communicate with women, and to
Yeah, and I think that when you were speaking about, as you go on your healing journey, it's like I have a housemate that's gone on that journey and has a lot of rigidity of fear of like, what if I lose control? What if something happens and I'm back there in the shadow and in the dark and in the pain? And it's like you need to trust that those things don't have power over you anymore because you've built your inner resilience and you can allow yourself to play in a healthy way.
Yes.
Yeah. Allow it to come up too.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think men having purpose, it's like when your energy is going so towards your purpose and something that inspires you and enlivens you and lights you up, you can't spend every night drinking, getting fucked up because something is requiring you to show up in your fullness. And so I just really feel, I know a lot of men listen to your podcast, finding your purpose, finding what inspires you and lights you up, and let that be at the forefront of your life. So you can go out and have a good time. You can go out and get drunk with the boys, or maybe you want to go watch a concert, maybe you want to go get on it a bit. Like, I think it's important to know where your energy is mainly channeling into, and that's actually in your truth, so that you can let some steam off and get wild, and then come back to your mission, come back to your purpose, and let that be the driving force of who you are as a man.
Yeah, it's super important. And I think like also when you experience that high energy level that you become without it, I think it's when you do go back, you're like, fuck, it actually drops me back into there. And although it can be fun going to have a good time and you can drop back into that energy, but you're like, no, I want more of that day.
Yes, I think when you receive so much energy when you are on the sober journey, or when you are connected to creation and inspiration and your purpose, you actually don't need anything to get you to a state of play and fun and openness. I remember when I was in my party years, I was so numb. So I actually needed heaps of alcohol and heaps of drugs to even feel something or open myself up. And now through my years of work, I'm so open already. Like, I'm such a vibe already that I don't actually need anything to make me the vibe. And I think for a lot of men, they are reliant on substances to open them. So doing the work like breath work, transformational events, plant medicine, psychology, just in brotherhood, it's opening them up and bringing them deeper to who they actually truly are, so they can just show up in the world as themselves, and that's enough. They don't need substances to take them into another state. Who they are is enough, and I think that's so important for men to know and feel, but also embody and really anchor in for themselves.
For sure. Yeah. Huge message. Well, I'm hoping that this gets my female rating from 18% up to 25.
We'll share it. We'll share it. You'll definitely get some women.
It's crazy how it works, though. You know how. But you know, like sometimes when you talk about purpose, sometimes you just got to let go into what your purpose is. Sometimes I feel like, in a way, my purpose found me, and just allowing it to happen.
Yes, it actually emerges from your journey, from your life, from your obstacles, from all the parts of you that have died and rebirthed. That actually becomes the medicine that you then share. So for you, Dave, I can imagine you've been on a big journey, and now part of your purpose is actually sharing and enlivening and awakening things in other men that listen to you. You're also a father. So that is also a big part of your purpose.
Yeah, and so in so many ways, like it's also my way of saying sorry for a lot of the shit I've done in the past. You know, especially to my children. So they love seeing me where I'm at now, and inspires them. And you know, I took my daughter out for ramen yesterday. We just had a magic conversation, unreal. I actually so. When I was deep in the medicine on Saturday, I got a check-in with my with my children my whole life. Actually, talking about purpose, I felt like I got. I'm actually having a podcast on Thursday with Cam, because Cam was there as well, and we're going to be talking about all of this. But I felt like I was taken by things from a third world or a different a different place where they were sort of showing me that there's a spiritual warfare going on that we're not truly aware of, but we're all awakening to it. But it's really hard for these other identities to try and support us and help us. And so while I was in the medicine, they're saying, like, while we've got you, we're going to calibrate you and upload you with all this new information. And I was sort of just, like, laying there. And anyway, it gave, and then I was, and it just every part of my life, and it happened just so quickly. Like, I was just getting upgraded and got more insight of all the different areas of my life. And it was great. And but one of them was my daughter. And I'm just like, so how is she going? And I just felt her. I felt what she was going through and all the different things. And she's saying, no, she's doing really well and everything else, but she's just really reaching out for one-on-one time with you alone. And then it showed me all the times that I've been with her. It's always like I'm with family or if I'm friends, you know, and there's all this time. So 4 o'clock in the morning, I've texted her going, hey, when I get home next week, we're going out for coffee. And just by doing that, she's like, man, it's crazy you said that, because I was actually been talking and thinking a lot about that herself.
Yeah. Can I ask how old she is?
She's 19.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, my oldest daughter.
Beautiful.
Started young, and
that's so beautiful.
and it's great, you know. Like it's been a little bit. At first, it was a little bit hard being like a really young father, but
Of
now
course.
it's amazing. It's so. Sometimes I feel like she's a lot more mature than what I am. Like with the conversations we have, and she teaches me so much, you know. But yeah,
I think that's the new, like the more upgraded version of parenting, right? It's not seeing this hierarchy of like child and parent. It's seeing like how are we relating to each other and what are we inspiring in each other, because she's growing up in a world very different to how you grew up in the world.
Yeah.
And
I think that surpasses even parental relationships, but just in general, like we've created a system where we stay within our own age bracket rather than we're supposed to be community driven and everyone of all ages has wisdom, and we need to actually relate to people of different ages so that we can recalibrate what's actually happening in our community.
yeah. My son, who's 9, he's the one that really showed me what unconditional love is, you know, and you know, and feeling it. Like it didn't matter where I was doing, who I was, and how low or high I am, like his love was always there, and I was just like, I've never experienced that in my whole life, and it was beautiful. And it's all about listening, isn't it? You know, we're talking about that in relationships and communication, just being still with ourselves and
Constantly observing. We're all little scientists, and there's no right or wrong. Again, it comes down to the stories that we put on. We experience life for a particular reason, and it's then what we get to create from our experiences and the stories that we put on top, because all of us will have wounding at some point in our life, and it's like, how do we use our wounds to actually empower both ourselves and other people?
yeah.
yeah. And the wounds do become part of our purpose as well.
Absolutely.
The things that disempower us are also our medicine and the
Yeah.
things that we get to share with the world. So
Yes.
Yeah, I look at things a little bit different, like in that way. Is more looking at these struggles or hard times as opportunities more than
Yes.
Opportunities for connection.
Yes.
Actually, most of the time when you create the deepest bonds of someone, there's an element of vulnerability there. So it's going, this is what I feel shameful for, or this is what has hurt me, or this is what I'm experiencing, and someone else being like, yeah, I see that, like I'm here with you in that journey, or I've experienced similar.
I think that's also
Yes.
what we do in the show as well.
Yes.
Like for everything that we portray on the stage is like, I'm sure you can recognize it. And I think a lot of the feedback that we got, particularly around inner child, was even from men saying, you know, I'm not a woman, but the bullying piece was really, really, really resonated with me. It was really hard, or, you know, it brought up a lot of things from my past. And so I think, yeah, when we are showing that vulnerability on the stage, and we're showing all of the different ways in which we are affected by life and by circumstances and by situations that happen to us and with us, we can have some really great conversations.
Yes.
So and on that note, this is a question I'd like to ask as well, especially from a female's point of view, because the pressure you guys put on yourselves from outside expectations, and social media is huge. You know, in terms of like who you got to be or what you got to look like. I mean, men have it as well. So but I don't know. I sort of feel like females are more suffering or can suffer more from having to be a particular. You're going to get what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Like body image.
Yes.
Yeah,
This is my greatest mission in life.
Yes.
Like my solo show, I did a solo show that was all around it. So I talked very openly about it. I had an eating disorder for 7 years. And it was alarming for me. The worst of my anorexia was in 2012. Eating disorders have increased by 21% since that time. And for me, and what's even worse is like I was 16 when I developed the eating disorder. Now there's kids younger than 10 having eating disorders. And I'm like, social media isn't necessarily the demon. Like it can be a beautiful platform for education, for inspiration, but it's the dependency, like we're talking about the alcohol and substances. As soon as we depend on something or we don't have the tools for introspection or self-value or self-esteem, that's when they can start to be damaging. And I also just don't think that women are starting to step up about it, but I haven't seen that many women that have gone, cool, I've had an eating disorder, or this is a different way of relating to our body, or I'm having a shit day. And so this is a big thing that I observe for women. They go, I'm having a shit day, therefore I will fish for compliments of like, oh my God, I'm always so fat in this. And oh, you're so much beautiful than me. And we go into comparison rather than going, hey girls, like I'm just having a really bad day in myself right now. I'm feeling really low. Could I have some extra sister love right now? Like that is so endearing. And of course, as a sisterhood, you want to come around.
Sure.
For me, I can sometimes get triggered if I can feel a woman that's like fishing for that, like, oh, I'm so fat. I'm like, what are you actually wanting from me right now? Are you just having a low self-esteem day right now? Hey, I see you and we all have bad days. Let's work through this together. So yeah, there's a couple of things that come up with that. Yes, I think there's a ridiculously large pressure that women put on our
Comparing with
comparison,
which the world considers beautiful.
Yeah,
or,
absolutely. But also just comparing yourself to another woman's body. It's like we are all so unique, and it comes down to purpose as well. Our purpose is unique. You know, it's not about how many followers you have or how, you know, if you impact one person with the work that you're doing, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And likewise, our body, you know, are you trying to prove to everyone that you have a good body, or is it just to yourself? Or if you've got a lover, it's like the more that you deny and be like, no, I'm not good looking, or I'm not this, I'm that. I'm like, you're denying an opportunity for someone to really deeply love you because they love you and they're choosing you. So you're actually denying yourself that connection.
Because it's crazy, because from a male's point of view, you know, when we talk about being sexy, like from a female, it's like being natural, being yourself, being open, being feminine, you know, like is sexy to us. It's not how you're dressing up or pretending to be something else, or, you know, like a woman that's completely comfortable with who she is really attractive. And I think to probably to a healthy male maybe, like, but
for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we really portray in the show. It's like we give a representation of the true expression of the feminine in all her facets. So it's like, for example, when we journey the wild woman, that is the raw, feral, messy, unhinged, untamed piece of the feminine that has been very demonized and has just been completely ostracized from this feminine representation. And so I know for me, on my journey of thinking I need to be pretty and sexy and perfect and presentable all the time to be loved and accepted, really journeying the wild woman archetype has allowed me just to get fucking messy and raw and real and untamed and unhinged. And that has been such great medicine for me to know and also feel that I am loved and accepted in all parts of me, in my mess, because I love and accept that part of me myself. It actually comes from the self. And so when we can love and own that part of us, then we can represent that in the realness out in society, and then it becomes a ripple effect. We're actually going up against the system that is telling us to always be and look a certain way and be a certain size. And the true raw feminine, she is wild and she is connected to Mama Earth and she is in the full expression of herself. So I think definitely being able to own the sexiness and the prettiness and you know, the poiseness for sure, but also own the mess and own the realness and own the rawness.
Yeah,
for sure.
The sexiness is also a big one. I think with the lover archetype, it's like women are told that if we're too sexual, we're promiscuous, you know, we're manipulative, we're we're likened to that or the other, which is pure and virtuous Madonna, you know. So it's like pulling ourselves out of those two polarities and saying like it's okay to be more than that, and you're not in one camp or the other.
Can be both.
You can be
When
both.
you-
The virgin and the
When
whore.
you're feeling that, are you more judged by yourself or or a female or by the male?
Well, the Madonna whore complex
Like that,
is something that was originally coined because it's how men would perceive women.
Yeah.
So it's this idea that
Where such men love, they cannot desire. Where they desire, they cannot love.
so it's like the Madonna
Gotta
whore
write that on the
complex.
brick.
The Madonna, is the embodiment of this idea. Not the singer Madonna, but the Madonna is like the
Virgin
the
Mary,
virgin,
purity.
the purity. You're the one that you want to marry. It's very dependable, very loving. That unconditionality that you were talking
good
about,
wife.
Yes.
good wife. And then the whore is like the mysterious, the desire, the mistress,
Alluring.
And it's funny because I have so on my left side I have two tattoos. The only two tattoos that I have the lotus for me represents the Madonna, and I've got a snake on my ankle for the whore. And it's this idea that we've put into labels of as a woman, whether that's how men relate to you, but also how women relate to you, because both have their wounding. It's like the Madonna will be the one, yes, they're dependable, but they can also start to resent that for a while. It's like, well, why can't I have the fun? Why can't I go and be sexy or playful? And they can start to actually resent that in other women because they don't feel like they have the permission slip to explore that themselves. But likewise, on the other side of the coin, the whore can sometimes feel in a complete isolation because so much projection and judgment is thrown at them when all they're trying to do is just love so deeply and openly, and they just have such a big heart. And again, this is a whore when it's in a healthy expression.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I feel like
When
there's
you're
a
hooking-
misinterpretation of the
Yes,
word.
it's
The
very
word-
loaded.
That word holds a lot of charge.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's
We
a
should probably do
reclamation of
another
that.
podcast
just on the whore archetype. Yeah, so I mean, and that's the thing with words, and maybe this is why when we're watching dance, there isn't always this individual connotation or layers put on it, because dance is just what you're feeling in the moment versus when we use words. If we say whore, for one person, it could be like, fuck yeah, I love that word. And for someone else, it's like, whoa, that's too much, Or even, well, actually, no, I won't go there.
Yeah, I find it really interesting how people respond to a lot of the poetry in the show, particularly in the lover section, because I am very vulgar. You might even say, I say the word cunt in my poem.
I was actually going to say that, but cunt actually comes from the goddess Kunti, and so it actually is really rooted in divine feminine empowerment, and the fact that we use it as a slur these days is just hilarious.
I like that. Like I said in one of my speeches, I think it was like an "Are You OK Day" speech I'd done, and because I say fuck a lot, and I've even had
So do we.
and cunt, but if I've had a few comments online like going, I wouldn't let my children watch a podcast named like yours, like Fucking Real. And it gets me that people can limit their understanding or things just for a word and be so bothered by it,
Yes.
I think it's how you use the word.
Yeah.
We have a line in the show as well of a powerful woman is being able to drop fuck in a sentence, whether that's in the context of fucking or in the boardroom to get people's fucking attention. And that's actually something that my dad taught me. My dad was a very powerful leader and manager, and he literally taught me, he was like, don't be scared to drop the F-bomb when you're in a meeting, because people get complacent and they check out. And if every so often you have to be like, I need your fucking attention right now, because there's so much loading to that word, you know, it draws you in. The only thing I will say is when it's used out of context. So when we're using cunt or like pussy and things like that in a negative slur, like I'll call you a good cunt. Like, you're a good cunt. You know, I'm saying that because actually probably that's the highest compliment that I can give you versus, you know,
I call my best
connotation.
mates cunts all the time, you know. And even sometimes that they are generally, you know, but it's crazy how we can use that into our day-to-day life. I guess, and I just find it really, this is the first conversation we've had with females that say that, like the whore word, because for us males, like, the majority of women that if I called them a whore, they probably wouldn't be sort of.
Well, you're using it in a derogatory sense. You're not going to be like in the bedroom with your
I felt
partner
like
being
that
like,
was the only way
whore.
it was.
And really, the whore is just a woman that's hungry for sex.
And hungry for life.
She's a sexual being. Yeah, she really lets life fuck her wide open.
Yeah.
And so really, what is the whore?
Yeah.
And I love my whore. I love the part of me that loves sex, loves life, really lets life fuck me wide open. And I think...
So is there a whore on all different levels, not just sex? Or was whore just...
I think whore as a frequency is the moreness of you. Like, how much more can you have and open to? She's very opening for the system. And if you're journeying the whore as the archetypal frequency, it's very opening for your body. For me, my whore is actually very spiritual. It's like, how much life can I let in me and be fucked wide open by it? And so probably for a lot of your listeners, you're not going to understand what this really is. But if you were to journey...
First time I've talked about this.
Yeah. Well, we're very sexual open beings, and we're very sexually empowered, and we love to really implant this, that sex is sacred, sex is life, sex is creation.
Sex is fun.
Sex is fun. And so we teach embodiment, and through whatever way that comes through, dance, embodied journey, writing, and it's really allowing yourself to have permission to own these parts of us, because if you're not owning your whore, you're probably shaming her. You're probably actually not letting yourself have. And so where does that show up in your life? Yes, maybe in the bedroom, but also where else? Where are you restricting life? Where are you not letting yourself eat life? And when you can really own the bigness of who you are in your whore, you can really let life in, and it's an intimate experience with life. And so, yeah, we love reclaiming the word whore. I actually call her the holy whore, because when I'm tapping into her, it's a spiritual, holy experience with the divine.
Yes.
And I think that for me is actually the highest expression of openness and trust and realness.
I guess it's coming back to the story that we've been told. I mean, for me, when I'm hearing whore for a female, like some of the words of like untrustworthy or like
which there can be that frequency out there.
Yeah.
It's not. It's, you know, I think when
I'm
you
not saying that for
activate
that, but I'm just saying like these
For
thought
sure.
patterns can come
Because
up.
you
But
only
that
know
is
her
some
in
of
her
the shadow.
unhealthy version.
Yeah, that is some of the shadow side of the whore, is manipulative. And I think in the sex industry, for example, there is a lot of women that engage in sex work. And I think from the outside, it can be something to judge, to be like, how can you allow your body to be used in this way? But it's also like, let's talk about, first and foremost, the need for it. And let's talk about what Jade talks about a lot, is the sex priestess. The fact that women, our sexual energy is so healing when we're in a healthy expression of it.
Yes.
I'm trying to relate it to something that a man would have. And I'm thinking anger with us, you know, like I feel anger's looked at as bad for us, you know, we've got to suppress it, where I feel like if it's put into a healthy sort of projection.
Sacred rage.
Yeah. Well, it can also be sexy as well, you know, like, I mean, if we're using it in a healthy way.
exercising.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
anger is also very primal, so it's
Yeah.
connecting you to your primal body, which I think is really important for men to access.
And so the message I'm sort of picking up here is to sort of embrace it and rewire the story you've got around it.
Yes, own all parts of you.
I think for me, it also comes down to your motivation. So it's like for the anger, are you hurt and therefore wanting to hurt other people with your anger? Or has someone crossed a boundary? Or have you not figured out your own boundaries? You know, there's so many things you can start to get curious about. And same for the feminine with the whore, it's like, am I basing my sense of self-worth on the validation of other people? And do I think that my sense of self-worth is only worthy when I'm getting sexual validation?
So well said.
So,
well said.
and that can happen for any aspect in our life. Like our psyche and our identity and our ego is so hooked into how are others going to perceive us. But when we can come from like, am I being a good person? Am I still learning something about myself in terms of like, yeah, I don't know how to articulate my boundaries. And therefore that might be a new conversation of like, hey, I'm so sorry for being angry at you and getting triggered. This has really catalyzed me into realizing that I've got some work to do within boundaries, and this is how I can be supported going forward.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that's the same within sexual energy of like, hey, I want to apologize. Like, I've been really flirtatious with you. You see this sometimes when someone's in a partnership, like a male and a female are in a partnership, and a whore archetype comes in and is being flirtatious with the man. Because there can sometimes be an element of like, oh, well, that person's safe to be flirty with because they're taken. But without checking in with the woman, you know, it can come across as like you're stealing energy from someone. And it might just be in your nature that you're flirtatious and you're fun, and nothing should be shamed about that. Yeah. Actually, the catalyst is then sitting down with the woman if they're triggered and being like, hey, I'm so sorry. This was actually coming from a really pure space, and I actually just wanted to share appreciation. However, it's self-accountability. If you know that you are actually trying to get a bit of that attention and
the
shadow, then it's just taking accountability of like, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that was me being in shadow. And I take full responsibility, because how much safety that then creates with the other woman. Oof, like that's how we're rewriting some of these shadow archetypes.
100%.
But it's vulnerable.
It's fucking hard to do. It's hard to do, but it's necessary.
I love that you've actually gotten to see another side of us other than the show.
Yeah.
And I think the realness of who we are as women really trickles into the show, and that's why it's such an impactful experience, because you're feeling the energy behind the show, which is the energy of us.
Yeah.
I mean, you can sort of see that. I get a lot of compliments with this podcast of that it's just real and authentic and things as well. And I can see that with you guys in the show. Like, you can tell it's not just something that you've written for the sake of displaying to the public.
We also journey the archetypes like the whole time that we are putting the production on, and throughout the year we go through our own process with the archetypes, and there'll be one that stands out or that triggers us or that takes us on a journey.
It's like a medicine journey in itself.
It is. It's like an ayahuasca journey, but we are just like creating art at the same time, which is beautiful, because then I think each season that you come and watch the show, if you come the first season, the second season, the third season, you will see us in our different iterations depending on what archetype is really speaking to us or really flowing through us at the time. Yeah.
So how does people that are watching this want to see the show? Is there different? Tell me about the show and where can you see it? And is it evolving? Is it all the time, or is it?
Yeah. So we've done 2 iterations of it. Both have been during Fringe Festival. Fringe is an incredible platform for artists to be able to share their work in a mainstream way where there's hype and attention, because actually there's not as much of a culture in Perth, it's growing, to just go out to the theatre. There's a small population of people, but Fringe is this time where like anyone from multiple, like every direction go, oh, let's go see a show.
That's me.
Yeah. No, and it's nothing to be ashamed about, but it's just this like permission slip for different expressions of art to be seen during Fringe. So we'll do one more version of I Am Woman in 2026. So if you follow us at I Am Woman _ the show on Instagram, that'll be the updates. We're also taking it to Adelaide for the first time next month, which next week. Oh gosh, yeah,
We fly on Monday.
yeah. So
All of you.
Yeah,
right.
7 of us.
Yep.
There's 7.
There's
Okay.
7 girls.
But yeah, there's definitely things in the works all the time. From there, each of us as individuals do like workshops. I'm pretty much a full-time performer now, so I'll have different things happening throughout the year. So if you follow all of us individually, you'll be able to see the different work that we're doing. There might be something coming out later in the year, we'll see, but definitely if you want to see the show, Fringe next year, so 2026 will be probably your last opportunity in Perth. But it's always growing, and it's always based on feedback. Like for me, I think it's about reducing this idea that feedback is a bad thing. Instead, from doing the first iteration last year, which came from the idea of my archetypal alchemy framework. I had the idea about 4 or 5 years ago of turning that into a Fringe show, sat with it, allowed it to develop. The women that I wanted to work with started to drop in. I reached out to these girls. Just every little bit has just been patiently waiting and being gifted at every time. This is the next step. This is the next bit. And this year, one of the things that came up was the older women being represented in the show. And so for me, my initiation this year was working with crone archetype, because as a mid-30-year-old woman, I'm like, who am I to talk about the crone archetype or even create a dance for a crone when I don't feel like I'm a representation of that? And rather than separating myself from it, it was, again, as Jade said, it's part of my psyche, and my relationship to the crone is part of my psyche. And so I just sat with that and allowed that to unfold. And so likewise, I can't say right now if the show is going to be exactly the same next year. I trust that feedback will come back to me and will adapt based on feedback, or if there's an intuitive message that's given to me that feels right or feels right for any of the girls, they will usually come to me and be like, this is what I feel for this part. And then we unpack it together and we recreate it together.
Beautiful. I like how when you're in alignment, how things just happen. The right people. I liked how you just said like all the right people come in.
Yeah, I sent an email to six women. No, that's not right. 5 women. I'm the 6th woman. 5 women. 4 of them got back to me pretty much straight away and were yes. The one person that couldn't had other things happening in their life, but they actually came on board this year to they speak Noongar, and so they actually did our acknowledgement this year. So every woman that intuitively came to me has contributed to the show.
Well, I'm going to wind it up as much as
We've gone deep, we've gone down the rabbit hole.
I love it.
But what I do say to most of my guests, because I always have this, there's more to talk about. I've been gifted the opportunity to be used as a vessel for this podcast, and the doors are always open. And I really appreciate you guys coming on here and inspiring us is the word that's coming up, particularly me. And this is one of the beautiful things I get to have about being a host of the podcast. I just learn so much, and it's like a little therapy session for myself every time. But the doors are open, and I'm sure at any given time we'll have you back on here and to share more.
Thank you.
We would love to.
Yeah, and to so if anything does come up, let me know.
I mean, maybe we can even get Kate and Laura, who are our crones.
Yeah.
I feel like that'd be beautiful hearing from
anytime.
the older women.
And like even just with my charity and that, like we're although we do men's events and groups and stuff like that, we're trying to develop like a females. So I'd even from a personal side of things, I'll probably keep connection with you guys and seeing if we can run some men's female workshops or
some dance. I'm actually working on a male female collab dance at the moment.
Yeah,
so
cool.
that'd be beautiful.
You're so beautiful. Yeah, bring in the masculine archetypes.
Yeah. Let's see where the journey's just started.
Yes.
But thank you. I really appreciate you guys coming on here. And I will have a link to all of you guys on the links on the YouTube and whatnot. so everyone can connect with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for
And
having
if
us.
any of your listeners have friends or family in Adelaide, we will be there next week. So definitely come check us out.
Cool. Exciting.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.